Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, June 8th. There are two types of items on the agenda. If the item says public hearing and you'd like to speak on that item, there are yellow cards in the back. Please fill out one of those cards and bring it up front. We'll call on you during that hearing. If it's a decision item, you're welcome to stay, but there is no public comment. We ask applicants to keep their presentations to 30 minutes or less, and we ask members of the community speaking to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less. That being said, we will stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on the agenda, site plan modification public hearing, John Bolson, SP 2022-010, south side of Main Street, State Route 27A, 38 feet west of Willow Avenue, Islip, 584 Main Street. Applicant requests parking, landscaping, and buffer relaxations in connection with a change of use from an existing 2.5-story dwelling to a mixed-use building for office space and 5 apartments. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the applicant, Tom Abate, A-B-B-A-T-E. I'm an attorney with offices at 88 Sunnyside Boulevard in Plainview. Tonight's application, as the notice reveals, seeks that relief necessary to convert an existing 2.5-story dwelling to offices and 5 apartments. The premises is located in the GST, the General Service T zoning district. And under section 68488P, as in Peter of our code, mixed use is permitted as of right. Now that comes with a caveat, obviously, that there cannot be a retail component, hence the office use which we propose. The specific location is 584 Main Street, and it's directly across the street from the Bolson Restaurant Group. And while the corporate applicant is 584 Main Street LLC, that is John Bolson. We're all familiar with him, his successful restaurants, and his realty holding. But that's also important because this property, the subject property, abuts the lot on Main and Willow, on which you and the town as a whole approved Meridian Lofts. That's a 10-unit rental building. That is also John Bolson's property. So not only will these sites be next to one another, as you're going to see, they're going to operate in conjunction with one another. On this site, we have 2 structures. We've got a freestanding building which houses a hair salon, which is going to remain, and then we have the subject structure, which is the 2.5-story dwelling. At the outset, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, it's paramount to note, we are not changing the footprint of that structure. We're not even changing the footprint of the other structure on site. As to that 2.5-story building, we're not adding a single square foot. We're not even changing the roof lines. In terms of the facade, it's going to look pretty much the same. So I just wanted to make that clear at the outset. And even though it's largely interior alterations, the proposed use causes us to fall short of the requisite off-street parking. But tonight we're going to demonstrate to you that this use will work with the reduced parking, albeit by code, and moreover, that it will be far less intensive than the as-of-right uses otherwise permitted in the GST district. The sad reality, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is that those as-of-right uses are wholly inappropriate for this site. They just wouldn't function. Mr. Bolson purchased the premises in 2019. It was vacant at the time. He immediately looked to lease it, virtually no takers. Then in March 2020, lockdown. Now, tonight, we have emerged, or we are emerging from COVID, but many of our shops and our restaurants have not. So in my opinion, as land use counsel, mixed use in our downtown here is especially important if we can establish it. As land use counsel, I've long extolled the virtues of mixed use. They add vibrancy to the community. They make the downtown a walkable village. They reduce the reliance on automobiles. They give us bodies in the street. They put people's downtown. So we need those extra individuals to support our shops and eateries now, post-COVID, more than ever. The mixed-use plan that we proposed to you, the offices will all be upfront. So we're proposing 886 square feet of offices. They will all be on the Main Street frontage. And we're dividing it roughly in 2. So if you were to approach the front door, there'll be an office on your left-hand side and an office in your right-hand side. And the balance of the building then will be 5 apartments, the rear of the first floor and then the second and third story as well. So while I have said it's mostly interior reno, as staff could tell you, we've been working with them for months and months and months. So we've made several changes to our original site plan, and to go over that, I called Mr. Michael Marinas, a professional engineer with Barrett, Bonacci, and Van Wheel, to go over what we propose and the changes we intend to make to the site. Mr. Marinas.
I have a copy of the site plan I'd like to bring up.
Mr. Marinas, before I ask you any questions, please just give the chair and members of the board an overview of the site.
Sure. Good evening. The existing 12,343 square foot site fronts on Main Street and is adjacent to the Meridian Lofts, which was discussed is owned by same ownership. The existing site currently has 3 structures. The garage in the rear is going to be removed under this project. The hair salon is to remain, and the 3-story office residential was already discussed by Mr. Body. Presently, there is 2-way traffic in and out of the driveway curb cut on Main Street. We're proposing to make that a 1-way entrance only, with traffic to circulate counterclockwise. In order to achieve that, we're going to remove the existing curbing along the southeast corner of the property to interconnect the parking lot for the existing property with the adjacent Meridian property.
So basically, Mr. Marinas, we're reducing a conflict point on Main Street. Right now, it's 2-way. We're going to make it 1-way, ingress only.
That's correct.
And then our residents and or patrons of the hair salon will exit through the Meridian Loft site onto Willow, correct?
Yes, that's correct. On the site.
Could you describe the parking scheme that you have designed for the premises on your site plan, please?
Sure. Obviously, we're limited in site area here, but what we're proposing to do is put 5 parking stalls in the rear, which will be 1 per residence. And we have 2 parking stalls in the front, 1 for each of the 2 office spaces. The hair salon, we anticipate, currently operates with on-street parking, and we anticipate that they would continue to operate in that manner.
Meridian incorporated some significant evergreen screening between us and the neighbors. Are we proposing that for this site as well?
Yes, the buffer along the southern portion of the property is going to be extended from Meridian across our property. We're also proposing to add a new pocket park in the area between the buildings for the residences of both dwellings to enjoy.
Yeah, if you could point that out, please.
Sure, that's also in the plans that I forwarded to you. But the pocket park is going to be located here in between the 2 existing buildings.
Now, that's an important point, because in fleshing this out with staff, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, they were looking for us to increase the width of the walkway to be ADA compliant. But the way you've designed it, Mr. Marinas, it is ADA compliant, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was it in our viewpoint and our urging now tonight to the board to keep it of the width it is so we could put more landscaping on site?
Yes, that's the idea. We did have some walkways that were wider or desired to be wider, but we decided to go with the thinner walkways, which remain ADA compliant and provide a little bit more green space. I also wanted to point out the 2 ADA lifts that we're proposing, 1 in the front and 1 in the rear, to allow for access for ADA compliancy.
What are we doing in terms of refuse collection?
The refuse collection is presently a dumpster on the Meridian property, and that would be shared by both.
I have no further questions of Mr. Marinas unless the board does.
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call my next witness, Michael Slavinski. He's a registered architect with the firm Buller Pfluger Architects. I'll be very briefly. Mr. Slavinski, first of all, before you testify to the board, can you confirm that which I said at the outset? We're not changing the footprint in any respect. Is that correct?
Correct. The building footprint is not changing.
We're not adding a single square foot.
Correct.
We're not changing the roof lines.
Correct.
And the facade's going to pretty much, even though you're the architect, look pretty much like it is right now, right?
Yeah, there will be a couple of window changes for the new layout, for the new interior layout, but we'll make sure to match the existing trim and window styles that the existing building has.
Very good. Now, you also heard me briefly describe the layout, and I said offices up front. How many apartments will be behind those offices on the first floor, and what will they be comprised of?
There will be two one-bedroom apartments, and these will be the accessible apartments. These will be the ones that will have the ADA lift, providing accessibility to them.
And on the second floor, what do we propose?
Second floor would have two more apartments. These would not be accessible, ADA accessible. They, per code, do not have to be.
Will they each be one-bedroom apartments?
Yes, they'll each be one bedroom.
And that leaves us with the third floor. Only one apartment up there, correct?
Correct.
How many bedrooms?
Two bedroom for the first one.
All right. Mrs. Slavinski, you heard Mr. Marinas talk about the pocket park. And while we see it on the site plan, you brought renderings with you as to what that will look like so the board can
Yeah.
envision it, correct?
So we have some views here of what it would look like between the two buildings. So aerial.
Just going to ask you to speak very loud so everybody can hear you.
So here the aerial view from the top, it would be right between the two buildings. There would be a patio, the walkway that would bring people from the parking to the front to access the apartments on the second and third floor. And then here you also see it from the side.
And I'll hand that sheet up as an exhibit at the conclusion.
And can you have him turn that around and do the same presentation from those from the community that might be here?
Absolutely.
So here would be the aerial view, the after park and the Pddec buildings. There would be patio, right here from the side, showing how the building would look like.
Thank you. One final question. This building now, is it sprinklered?
Yes, it is sprinkled.
And while we might, or will we, you're the architect, have to make modifications to that full sprinkler system, we'll embark upon that in strict accordance with the code.
Yes,
correct?
of course, yeah. It would need to be modified for the new layout.
Thank you very much. I have no questions of Mr. Slavinski unless the board does, and I'm going to offer up these renderings.
What are the square footages of the apartments?
Square footage. So I'll go floor by floor. The units in the back, one would be 517 square feet, the other would be 482 square feet. On the second floor, the units would be sorry, I don't have the square footages for those floors on my sheets here.
So what we'll do is, while I have just two witnesses left, our architect will look at it, we'll give you those numbers, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I call my next witness, who is, thank you, Mike, our traffic expert, there is one important factor to that which we propose, which has direct bearing on the parking and traffic, and that's this. In Meridian Lofts, which is, as I mentioned, Mr. Bolson also owns, each tenant has a dedicated parking stall assigned to them on site. That's per lease. Each tenant also has the right to use the private parking lot for Bolson Restaurant Group, which is directly across the street, and that's by lease. This application, should you find favor with it this evening, will incorporate the same two factors. So cottage suites, as Buller Fluger has captured this pursuant to Mr. Bolson's direction, each tenant will have an assigned parking stall on site, and that will be per lease, be expressly in their lease, and each tenant will have the express right, again, per lease, to use the BRG lot directly across the street from the subject. And that is a 32-stall lot, so it can easily accommodate both the Meridian and the cottage suite tenants, and then some. So with that as a preface, I call Mr. Jeffrey Lazarchik of the firm R&M Engineering, and I ask that you recognize him as a traffic expert. Good evening, Mr. Lazarchik. Good evening. You've conducted a study, obviously, for our mutual client site, correct?
I did, and the letter report has just been handed up as evidence.
Before you get into the details, we're looking at a big number. It looks like a big reduction. Let me get right down to the nitty gritty. Does it work?
Yes.
All right. Why does it work? What factors will make this project operate harmoniously and safely within the downtown area?
The main reason is the three uses, the hair salon, the office, and the residentials all have different peak hours. The residential peak hours are generally in the evening and overnight when the offices and hair salon is closed. And those businesses are operating when the residents may be away at work. So that frees up the parking and there's less conflicts between the three uses.
Are there municipal lots in the immediate area?
We counted 3 municipal lots and all the on-street parking. It's municipal lot 2, 3, and 7. 7's on the southerly side of Main Street. The other 2 are on the northerly side, west of the main town hall.
So they're all within approximately 300 feet of the subject?
They're all, the furthest one is the one almost adjacent to town hall, which is approximately 95 feet away. The other one is approximately 200 feet away, and the southerly one is approximately 30 feet away.
So all within 300 feet?
All within 300 feet, yes. And in addition, we counted all where there's available on-street parking as well. And they're all in the tables in the letter report.
So we've got a combination of municipal lots at our availability as well as ample on-street parking, correct?
And yes, and then as you remember, the Volstead Resident Group private parking lot as well.
Okay. Let me ask you this, and I know you have data to give, and I don't mean to steal your thunder, but did you do a comparison between that which we're proposing to the members of the board this evening and those uses which are otherwise as of right in the GST zone?
The one that we looked at was an as of right, converting the whole site to all business, and that would generate, excuse me one moment, I do have it here. Just want to make sure I get my numbers correct. Would be approximately 18 vehicles parked for that component of the property. The study looks at the combined property with the Meridian and everything else. And our portion of the property, we would anticipate 9 spots. So we can see that's much smaller than what an as of right would have.
Could you then just, in the narrative, I'm sorry, I was interrupting you, just give your findings to the board and the basis upon which you are reaching the conclusions you're providing tonight?
Yes. All right, so as I indicated, I hand up a report. In the report, there's a parking exhibit that shows the locations of all our accounts, and then tables 1 through 10 is our data. On Friday, April 15th and Saturday, April 16th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., we did 30-minute interval counts in all the areas indicated in the parking exhibit. The tables in the study area, including on-street, there were a total of 483 parking stalls. And again, tables 1 through 10 show all the data broken down per half an hour. Our peak periods we found were Friday, April 15th at 2 p.m., which 303 vehicles were parked, and that left 180 vacant spaces. On Saturday, April 16th, 7 p.m. was a peak observed hour, a half an hour, and 299 vehicles were parked within our study area, providing 184 parking stalls. Based on ITE, the weekday peak demand for all the uses and combined with the Meridian, we would anticipate 22 vehicles for the weekday and Saturday 20. And that data is included in table 11. And as indicated on the site plan, the overall parking provided on site is 19 stalls, which is 3 deficient of the 22 that ITE would see as the peak demand on Saturday. And as I previously stated, the availability of on-street parking lot and the Bolson Restaurant Group parking lot would easily be able to handle those 3 additional cars if that should happen. As I stated earlier, the peak uses differ, so they're all not going to be there at the same time. In addition, some of the tenants living there may not even have a car because it approximates to the Islip train station, which is less than a half a mile and is considered walking distance as well. So it's my opinion that the availability of the lots on street,
Bolson parking lot, and the different time periods for peak demand, that there'd be sufficient on-site parking. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I have no questions of Mr. Lazarchuk. Does the board?
What would you say the distance is from there to the Islip train station?
It's
Obviously, I know
just
the
under
answer.
a half a mile.
And you think that people are going to walk the half a mile in the hot summer or the cold winters or snow to
Some
get to the
people
train
do.
to go to work in the city?
They had an old planning commissioner who used to ride his bike from there every day.
Yeah. I don't think that's one of your strongest arguments. Yeah, maybe some of the other ones are better. But, the other question I just want to ask you is for your parking calculations and the way you've done that, the municipal lots and the on-street parking, I believe, are non-overnight parking, correct?
Correct.
So how does that factor in for somebody who's a resident? Are they going to get up and move their car and then when the time comes, or?
Well, I believe probably because since we're free as fishing, if we're assuming everybody at the same time, they would use the Bolson parking lot, and that doesn't have no restriction.
You're talking about the one across the street?
Yes.
The restaurant parking lot?
Yes, the
No,
restaurant.
it's not the restaurant parking lot. It's
No.
not the teller's lot.
It's
It's a
the
separate
restaurant
One,
group.
BRG.
correct. I refer to it as that, yes.
Which
Yes.
contains, it's a, yeah, I made the same mistake. It's a 32-stall lot.
And how many employees use that lot?
I will defer to. It was indicated.
Also says about 8, Mr. Chairman,
Only 8. Okay,
and only until 5 o'clock.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one final witness before I do. You asked about this, someone asked about the square footages, and Mr. Slavinski tells me that the first floor apartments will be 482 square feet and 517 square feet respectively. On the second floor, both will be 680 square feet in area. And then the third floor, which is the 2-bedroom, there's only one apartment up there, that will contain 993 square feet. Thank you for asking that question, because it's important that it be in the record. To bring us home, I have John Breslin Jr. of the firm Breslin Appraisal. He's a licensed real estate appraiser with the state of New York, and I ask that you recognize him as a real estate expert.
Good evening. John Breslin, business address 44 Elm Street, Huntington. In connection with this application, I was tasked with reviewing the application and giving an opinion as to its impacts on real property values and the surrounding community. I, of course, was given and reviewed the plans, visited the subject neighborhood, and Mr. Abadi stole some of my thunder in talking about the benefits of creating mixed use in downtowns and the benefits that creates for the use of real estate. We've seen the evolution of that throughout Long Island over the last 10 years or so in some of the downtown areas and what it's created, both benefiting the downtown areas and the communities as a whole, putting people in the downtowns, creating walkability, creating tax base, and creating people in the downtowns to service the merchants in the downtowns. This is another opportunity to do that. The pandemic has created even a further need for that, as we've seen the demand for office space and retail lessen. The retail demand had started to lessen even before the pandemic. So it's even more important to have people close by these shops. And then the need for different services comes about, and those stores will be filled by those needs. So the creation of the apartments in the downtown area is something that is very good for the business community, but also provides a different type of housing stock that is needed throughout all of Long Island. And the downtown is a great place to put it. In this particular area, the location or the depth of the business intensity or the depth of the business uses was established many, many years ago. This is not going to alter or change that. This is along the business strip of Main Street. The depth of that business strip exists. This is not altering it. It varies as you go further to the west along Main Street and on the other side of the street. In this case, this property will remain exactly as it is. Interestingly enough, we're going to open it up to Willow, which is a residential street, but the separation point on Willow will not change. There's a very interesting traffic control device, if you will, on Willow, just to the south of the exit of the driveway on Willow, where the road indents and narrows to clearly show the demarcation of the change where the business uses that are on the west side of Willow and the medical office building on the east corner end, and then the residential community begins. And that line is very clearly marked by that traffic control device. So by allowing this, it's not going to change or alter that. And the intensity of this use from a divan point of view is potentially far less than what you could have as of right in the business zone. So in conclusion, it's certainly not going to adversely impact property values and potentially has the potential to have a benefit to the surrounding business community. Thank you.
Board have any questions of Mr. President?
Not at this time.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is my case. John Bolson asked me to point out to you that he has a history with his real estate development within the township of adhering to the master plan that all of his projects have. This one will as well. As I noted in my opening remarks, what we are proposing is as of right in the GST zoning district. We do, albeit need modifications, most especially as to off-street parking. But again, we are adhering, as is the tradition of Mr. Bolson, to the township's master plan. That concludes our case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have any cards on this. Did anybody come in who wished to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Gonzalez to give us a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This GST zoned almost 0.3 acre site is currently improved with a 2.5-story dwelling, 408 square foot garage, and a 948 square foot 1-story commercial building, all built around 1900. The 2.5-story dwelling was originally CO'd as a 2-family dwelling, then according to the property CO was changed to a business and retail use in 2003. The proposal before you tonight, as stated by the applicant's team, is to change the use of that building to 5 apartments, 4 1-bedroom, 1 2-bedroom, and approximately 900 square feet of office space, while keeping the existing hair salon in the building up front and demolishing the garage in the rear. The site's access will remain on Montauk Highway, with now a one-way only, and the applicant will open the Meridian Lofts parking lot adjacent to this property and provide cross-access with egress to Willow Avenue. The main issue is the significant parking relaxation being requested for this change of use. 24 stalls are required by code and only 8 are provided on site. We have discussed this with the applicant as far as the stalls that are being provided on site. We know that parking is at a premium in this location. However, 3 of those stalls are less than ideal. One in the rear, which is parallel to the 2.5-story dwelling, with close proximity to the one-way access around the corner of the building, and the other 2 up front, which is close to the curb cut access from Montauk Highway. Meridian Lofts was granted a 7-stall parking relaxation, approximately 61%, with the applicant required to obtain additional parking off-site with an agreement through the town attorney's office. Staff would ask the applicant speak to the details of that agreement or that approval and where the additional parking for that site is. And the proposal to keep the existing 2.5-story dwelling is supported by staff, and the proposed uses coincide with a downtown area such as this. However, the applicant must demonstrate the parking for this site will not negatively impact the area. A full traffic and parking report was prepared and submitted tonight by the applicant, by R&M Engineering, and that will need to be reviewed by staff as well as the town's independent traffic consultant, L.K. McLean Associates, before this is brought back to the board. So based on that, staff recommends the board reserve decision.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
there was one aspect of Mr. Gonzalez's report that I think bears us to comment on, and it was about the stalls. May we?
The 3 stalls?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to recall Mr. Michael Marinas, because we did go over this with Mr. Gonzalez in great detail and with staff in general, and there's a reason they remain on the plan. Mr. Marinas, could you explain to the board why they remain on the plan and how they'll work?
Sure. We did look at it, and with the idea that we were aware that parking is limited and at a premium in this area. So we did want to have the 5 stalls, 1 for each of the residential areas in the back, and that is what drove the need or the desire to have that 1 additional stall in the back and the parallel parking stall immediately behind the building. And in that area, we did modify the curb line to make it easier for the vehicle to come in and out. And also, I wanted to remind you that we've eliminated the two-way traffic along this driveway. So there would only be vehicles coming in, obviously not very many. There's only a few parking spots in the back there. So we were comfortable, we created enough of a sight distance for anybody that's parking in there and anybody that needs to enter to be able to see each other and avoid any kind of conflict. Also, the traffic in this area is going to be obviously moving very slowly. Same thing in the front. In the front area, there is presently parking there. We propose to keep it remain. And each stall, the two stalls there are one for each office, which is obviously ideal given the constraints of the parking. And again, with the removal of the two-way traffic, we're comfortable that there's enough sight distance there and enough open area so vehicles backing in and out would not have a problem with any one vehicle coming in that one direction.
Not to be overlooked, and I think you touched upon it, this is really a restricted use site. It's not a shopping mall.
Correct.
So in which case, the parallel stall in the rear works with such a small intensity or low intensity use, correct?
Agreed.
And same with keeping the traditional stalls up front. They have worked, they'll continue to work.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Those are my comments. That's our case.
Question for you. You're saying the two stalls are currently up front now? Is that the representation you just made?
Sorry, I misspoke.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah. So I'm going to go to Mr. Bruno in 1 second. Just, I would ask that you speak to staff about the possibility of this possibly straddling the property line, maybe doing a better stall along there to get your 5 spots between the Meridian lofts and the current use. You don't have to answer it now, but certainly something to talk to staff about
Absolutely.
if that works. And, just the front sort of creates a precedent in downtown, which, we don't have generally parking. I'm looking right now along Main Street in Islip, but creating parking spots in the front of many of our other businesses that are along Main Street. So it's a dangerous
understand the
precedent.
concern, and we're trying to obviously balance the need with the space that is available. And we thought that with the traffic only coming in the one direction, that there would not be an issue with conflict, but we do understand the concern.
And
There are
we
two
could-
concerns.
Yeah, and we could clearly work with staff because our greatest concern is providing one stall per rental unit, which we
Right.
could still do if we excise those from the plan.
I think it's something worth discussing with staff, and also our consultants will look at it and provide comments back to us as well. I'm going to turn to Mr. Bruno.
One other thing, we understand that this is in its formative stage, and Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Colgan understand that as well. They said to us, couldn't flesh this out in greater detail. Truly, we were looking for direction from the board and from staff to see that which works, that which you would be amenable to in moving this forward. I'm sorry. There was
Mr.
a
Bruno.
question?
I just have a question because the applicant is going to be agreeable to strong covenants that allow for in other words, Mr. Marinas, you've talked about the fact that this is going to be one way. So now this site is not going to be able to exist on its own without the other site. I assume we'll agree to strong covenants that maintain that.
Yes, we will execute a cross-access agreement, which, as I noted at the outset, Mr. Colson owns both properties, so we're making an agreement with ourselves. But even if it's sold, the cross-access agreement gets filed in the county clerk's office, so it's along with both deeds, so it would be inviolate, even if they came into different ownership in the future.
We're going.
Absolutely. And we'll make it as strong as it needs to be, because we want the project to work, and it doesn't work without it, quite frankly.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggieri.
Yeah, I just have a clarification about the proposed ADA lifts.
Yes.
Are they just ADA compliant elevators, or are they actual lifts?
Mr. Slavinski, our project
Okay,
architect, will address that.
So they are open air lifts,
They are.
and they are ADA compliant. They are large enough for a wheelchair to go into them, be lifted up to our platform elevation, and to get to the entrance doors.
Would that limit your ability to market those 2 apartment units?
In which way?
Well, I'm thinking if it was an ADA compliant elevator, you would then have the ADA compliance for a tenant who needs that assistance. And then if the person who was interested in renting didn't need that assistance, they might appreciate having an elevator that would be an amenity to the apartment.
Well, it's not there solely for the apartments. It's there to access the offices.
Oh, it's there to access I thought the offices were on the first floor when you first walk in.
They are, but
So there are two lifts, one for the offices and one for the two residential units in the back. And these lifts, they do make those units in the back accessible. They do make them ADA accessible. That is how
Okay.
we're making them compliant with those lifts.
Okay.
Further questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No, we just wanted to clarify that the lifts are just to get people up from the grade to the first floor. They're just a couple feet.
Oh, it's just a couple of feet?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I didn't know.
Okay, no, I thought it was going up an entire floor, and I thought
No, it's just
it
from-
might be a nice amenity to have it as an ADA compliant elevator so that it serves multiple purposes.
Yeah, understood. It's just to get people from grade up steps, essentially three or four steps.
Okay, that's fine,
which
thank
is
you.
why I said it's for both the offices and the apartments on the first.
Gotcha, I understand now, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty? I'll repeat it. It's a motion by Mr. Moriarty to close the public hearing and reserve decision tonight to allow the town's traffic consultants to review the traffic report and report back to the board. It's a second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Item 2 on the agenda, Planning Board application public hearing. Ms. Louch, PB 2022-013, north side of Quality Street, approximately 147.65 feet west of Jade Street in Oakdale, number 17 Quality Street. Applicant requests a planning board certificate of appropriateness for the installation of skylights and other in-kind replacements in the planned landmark preservation district pursuant to 68-451A2. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Nicholas Pfluger of Bowler Pfluger Architects. I'm at 85 East Main Street, Bay Shore, New York, 11706. And I'm the architect on the project and here on behalf of the homeowner. I do have 4 packages that I can hand up. Thank you very much. And those are just the images here on the boards. So the existing building, to my understanding, is an old horse ranch that was converted into dwelling units in the 1970s. We are proposing to renovate one of the units at 17 Quality Street. On the exterior, the project consists of replacing the existing windows, replacing the front entry door, resodding the existing dormers, and installing new skylights. All of the existing brick will remain unchanged, and the existing roofing will also remain unchanged except for where the skylights are being installed. The new windows will match the existing color and style of the existing structure, in which the color is dark brown. The front door is currently a single door with a single side light that is off-center from its overhead brick arch. We are proposing to install a single door with 2 flanking side lights and center the door within that overhead arch. The door currently has some T111 sheathing infilling in between the door and the brick. We are proposing to replace that infill with reclaimed wood, which I think would be more in line with the historical style of the building. For the resodding of the dormers, we are proposing to replace the cedar shingle siding with new cedar shingle siding to match the existing, as the existing shingles are not in good condition. For the new skylights, we are proposing to install 3 skylights in the existing roof to provide more light into the interior. There are currently skylights at other locations on the building. You'll see in the package, we have an aerial that points to other skylights in other units. The frames of the skylights will also be dark brown. to match the existing windows or the replaced windows. In closing, we believe that the proposed renovations are in line with the historical character of the building and will not have any negative effect on the aesthetics. And I'll take any questions that the board may have.
No question at this time. We'll go to public hearing, staff report, and then we'll come back for questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have Irv Kraus. Just come on up to the microphone.
One large building, former Vanderbilt stables, and we're 2 units from the Louch residence. And there was a precedence for skylights when we moved in. We ourselves installed skylights, you know, with a variance. We got approval. So the precedent is there. So I'm just here to support the idea of adding skylights. I think in our case, it enhanced the livability of the upper level. It's a loft area, and it gave it some light and airiness that was lacking beforehand. So I'm supporting the project.
Thank you. I'm going to,
We're going to assume that the skylights are on the north side. Is that correct?
We're proposing on the south side.
On the front.
oh, wait, so, yeah, could just, if you want to ask your question on the record, we'll come back and ask you to answer those questions. Do you want to
I'm
know if they're
sorry.
on the, you want to know if they're on the north side?
I did want to know if
Okay,
they're.
I'll get you that answer right after the staff report. Okay?
Okay.
Does it change your opinion if they're not on the north side?
It was our understanding, we placed ours on the north side. If you look at the north side, further down, were in part of this structure were also skylights on the north side. And it was our understanding at the time that we were given permission to place skylights, that this would be sort of an established precedent that any skylights installed in this building would be on the north side of the building.
Thank you. We'll come back and get the answer. I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a staff report. If you can give her the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is in the Artist Colony in Oakdale, located off Hollywood Drive. The building was the former Vanderbilt Estate East Barn, constructed in the late 1800s, and it's been converted to attached single-family dwellings. The property has a PLP designation, which requires board approval of any material change of use or appearance. Tonight, the applicant is requesting approval of several exterior changes, which includes installation of 3 skylights along the southern facade facing quality, replacement of several windows on both the north and south facades with in-kind replacements, replacement of the front door, and installation of new mechanical equipment as per the utility company standards. The proposed replacements as shown on the plans are consistent with the historical character of the existing facade and constitute minor changes. Planning would just recommend the front door, window trim, and proposed reclaimed wood be painted the same brownish color that currently exists, which is what the applicant represented tonight. All the other elements as shown are in-kind replacements and withhold the integrity of the existing architectural style. Therefore, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. And I know you answered the question, but can you answer it officially for the record? The location of the
About the
skylight?
skylights, yes, the skylights are on the south side of the building, facing Quality Street.
Questions from the board? I'm going to go to Mr. Bruno, Mr. Frugieri. Go to Mr. Frugieri first. He's got a microphone. Good. And if you can send that microphone down to Gary.
I'm just looking at the exhibit that you presented us, and all of the skylights are on that northern exposure of the building. What's the significance or the importance of having it on the south side in your case?
Sure. So the reason why we placed them on the south side is because of the configuration of the floor plan. We are converting part of the existing unfinished attic into a mezzanine level. So just the placement of where that needed to be is coinciding partially with where the skylights are going. Also, the skylights are facing into a space that is going to be made a cathedral space, which then flows into that mezzanine space. So in other words, the large volume of space that we're creating, that's where the skylights are going. That's the simple.
And that same volume wouldn't be on the northern side of the building?
Correct. On the north side of the building, there's a master bedroom that has a flat ceiling that's remaining. So we're not proposing to bring any light in on that side, as it doesn't have that large volume of space.
Okay.
Mr. Bruno?
Now, I have to agree with Mr. Frugieri about this. I'm not a big fan of putting the skylights on the south side. That is the entry side for all the entrances to the building. I think the decision that was made, the precedent that was set about putting them on the north side was appropriate. That is not as prominent a side. Also, just this is very minor by comparison, but I was going to ask you about the spacing of them, because the one in the center is kind of strangely off center and gets very close to the dormer piece there, so it kind of interrupts it. But in general, I am not a fan of seeing them on the south side. I think the north side is where the precedent is set. I think the fact that the south side is the entrance side, so I have to tell you, my opinion is that they are appropriate on the north side.
Sure, that's understood, and I'll speak to the spacing of the skylights. Part of that is due to the configuration of the floor plan. The two skylights, when you're looking at the front facade facing Quality Street, those two skylights are centered in that cathedral space, so that's why they're there. The one off to the right is going down into the front bedroom, not the master bedroom in the rear. And we were placing that to basically miss the dormer and keep a certain distance away from the valleys of the existing dormer, not to impede on the flashing and whatnot. So that's why the spacing was placed that way. And for the skylights to go on the north side, just with this floor plan configuration, it just wouldn't make any sense. Again, that's why we placed them on the south side to make use of that light coming in.
Yeah, but you are creating how this occurs, correct?
You mean we're creating the space?
Yes.
Correct, but
So you're creating the situation, you're saying you need them because of the floor plan situation that you are creating.
Correct, but we can only configure the floor plan in the way that we are because the stair that's going up to the mezzanine level is stacking on top of the stair that's going from the first floor to the second floor. So that basically controls the way the reconfiguration of the floor plan can be. So, in terms of the design process, there's really no other way of doing it.
Apparently, the other units have done it some other way, but
Well, I think that not all the units are the same.
Okay.
The interior configurations are at least slightly different. Some are very different.
to be honest, it doesn't change my opinion of whether they should be on the north
Sure.
or the
No,
south.
and that would have been the homeowner's preference is to stay in line with that. But again, it just didn't work with.
And
what
again,
we're
but
proposing.
we are here to determine the appropriateness of this, and I think what we're
Understood.
saying is that apparently it's been determined by previous boards that the appropriateness is on the north side. So, and I don't see, because the south side is the entrance side to all the others, I personally don't see any reason to change that.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Frugieri?
And then also on a minor note, as I look at the photos that you submitted and the renderings that you prepared, when you talk about the new cedar shakes, they're considerably lighter than what's on the existing building. Can those cedar shakes be stained so that they almost look aged, but they're not old and rotted?
Sure. We can certainly stain them to get them as close to weathered as we could, and then of course they will weather over time.
They're going to
as well.
weather over time,
Yeah.
but when they're first put on, they're going to stick out like sore thumbs on that.
Right.
on
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
structure.
If you look to, I think you can see it in one of those pictures. maybe you
Yeah.
can, in one of those pictures. One of the units that's actually just to the east of our unit did replace the cedar shake, and it wasn't stained or anything. You see, it's a very
It does weather, yeah.
new color on it. But yes, we can certainly do that. That's not a problem.
Any further questions from the board? Can I ask, based on Mr. Bruno's comments, that you submit floor plans to us so that we can review them and see the point that you're making? And then,
Yes, I actually have a large copy here. I didn't bring small copies.
yeah, I would ask you, submit them to us, we can review them, have the staff review them, then we can,
Gotcha.
Feedback on that.
So submit to the planning department.
yeah, to Ms. Wozniak. Is there anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
No.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Frugier?
I'll make a motion that we close this hearing and reserve decision on this application pending the submittal of the floor plans so that we can review the requirement to relocate the placement of the skylights.
It's a motion by Mr. Frugier to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second. By Mr. Brown. I don't know whose hand that was down there. I'll go with Mr. Brown. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And this way, if we are going to break the precedent, we have some, look at it, yeah.
Town Board Application Public Hearing, Transform Bohemia, New York, LLC, CZ 2022-010, north side of Sunrise Highway Service Road, State Route 27, approximately 500 feet west of Johnson Avenue, Sayville, 5147 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests 2 board special permits for fast food restaurants pursuant to 68-301G and a minor subdivision. Site plan modifications may also be required as part of this application. Good evening to the applicant.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is John Stalakis, and I'm an associate with Sir Tillman, Ballin, Adler, and Hyman, attorneys for the owner applicant, Transform Bohemia NY LLC. With me here this evening are Ben Plum from Buller Engineering and Ethan Chakosky from Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. If the board needs copies of any of the plans, we're happy to provide those, and there's a large plan before me here. Transform has applied for special permits from the town board for 2 fast food restaurants with drive-throughs, a minor subdivision, and site plan modification. The applications collectively seek to maintain the existing building on one parcel and create 2 new out parcels along the Sunrise Highway westbound service road, one for each proposed restaurant. The premises are located in the 5,000 block on Sunrise Highway in Bohemia, comprise approximately 24.5 acres, front along the service road, and are zoned in the Business 3 district. The premises are situated on the north side of Sunrise Highway between Johnson Avenue to the east and Lakeland Avenue to the west. The westerly and easterly adjacent parcels comprise retail sites, and the premises, together with the adjacent retail sites, comprise a larger shopping complex benefiting from cross-access and shared parking. The westerly adjacent parcels contain a Bed Bath & Beyond retailer and a Burger King restaurant with a drive-through. The easterly adjacent parcel contains various retailers and restaurants, including a Chipotle and a Panera Bread. The northerly adjacent properties behind the premises comprise a residential community. The premises previously hosted a Kmart with a garden center, an Office Max, a Borders Books and Music, and a Sports Authority. These businesses more or less ceased operations during the 2010s. The existing building has been and continues to be renovated to host new tenants, including Floor & Decor, At Home, and Aldi. The existing building contains approximately 233,000 square feet on the 24.5 acre site, and the applicant seeks to subdivide the premises into 3 parcels. Parcel 1 would comprise approximately 22 acres and retain the existing building. Parcel 2 would comprise 0.85 acres in the southeastern corner of the site, for which the applicant proposes a 2,106 square foot restaurant with indoor-outdoor seating and a 12-car drive-through queue. Parcel 3 would comprise 1.59 acres in the southwest corner of the site, for which the applicant proposes a 5,167 square foot restaurant with indoor-outdoor seating and a 44-car drive-through queue. If Transform's applications are granted, then Transform would make applications to the planning board for the respective site plan approvals and outdoor seating entitlements for the out parcels. If the planning board would like, I can suggest the special permit criteria of section 6834, or we can answer any questions as the development team.
We're familiar with them, so we can ask any questions as they develop.
Thank you.
Is that your entire presentation?
Yes. Unless,
Okay. So I'm going to go to public comment, then we'll go to staff report, then we'll come back for questions.
thank you.
So go to Thomas Canizaro.
Hello and thank you. I am a resident that lives in the residential property that is just adjacent to the back part of the building that's already there, at home and floor and decor. We have some other residents here as well. Our concern is going forward. If we build on the problem that exists in that parking lot behind these buildings already, we're going to have a very bad traffic problem back there. An overnight traffic problem, a during the day traffic problem. Right now, we have 24-hour trucks that park behind our houses, tractor trailers, diesel engines running. They must be delivering or picking up merchandise or dropping off. I have video and pictures that are extensive beyond what we could show here in a few minutes. The problem that we have here is that there's no accountability so far from either the tenant or the local police that we've called, because they consider it private property. And being private property, they really don't have the ability to stop someone from parking and sitting in this area. And in addition to this, there are cars that come through there, kids or what have you, probably not only kids, that race, spin out, donuts in the old days, we called them, right? Continually through the night or randomly, so much so that a lot of us don't even have out backyard gatherings anymore for our families. I'll sit there with the hamburger, and after a few minutes, this activity chases us in the house, 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Additional restaurants like this can only increase that problem. They will only increase, and there's really no supervision. We don't have any surveillance back there from the landlord or anybody in those existing buildings. The police will come when we call. After many calls, they have other things to do. And they've explained that they're trying to get there, but they have no jurisdiction. I had one officer a couple of months ago say that he comes to that property because he knows it's a problem at least twice a week for the last year and a half. And I asked him, how many times have you caught anybody doing anything? Either when I called or my neighbors called. 0. They've never actually encountered someone doing, according to them, the fellow that I spoke to, actually running, doing these illegal or whatever you want to call them, donuts. And the trucks that have lined up, I have video of about 3:45 in the morning back in March. There had to be 8 or 10 trucks lined up on this fence.
Yeah, it's on the
north side. Running. Half of them were running, some of them weren't. They're right against the fence. I mean, literally from where I am to the lady who's typing here, running their engines, and that's my yard. My home's not as far as the back of the building. We need to have some accountability for the property, and 2 more additional. There is Burger King. I'm not sure if it was mentioned. There's Burger King there as well on the property on the southwest corner. That's a problem that has to be addressed. I know we're speaking particularly to these 2 proposals tonight, but we really need to address the existing problem because it's not going to get better. It's not going to get better. It's getting worse. I've considered moving. That's not good. I'm there 20 years. I've considered selling my house. My neighbors can tell you that, just for that reason.
Thank you. We will address those concerns that you raised. Thank you for bringing them to our attention. We go to Silvana Lewis.
Okay, I've been a resident of the Regency, which backs up to the back parking lot of the proposed parking lot that they are talking about, and I've lived there for 30 years. I've seen lots of things come and go. There are already 3 restaurants there. There's a Chipotle, there's a Burger King, and there's a Panera Bread. If we add another 2, 3 restaurants, you are going to create a lot more traffic, and that back parking lot is a cut through. So it goes from Lakeland Avenue, like they said, to Johnson Avenue. The town actually owns a piece of that, which they consider a road. It's called Greenbrier. I thought it was Car Shack, but it's Greenbrier. So, but when you call the town, they say, oh no, that's not us. But on the map, it is owned by the town. And then it's a mishmash with the back parking lot. So it's a cut through into the front of that parking lot and from Lakeland to Johnson. So if you add 2 or 3 more restaurants, people are going to be cutting through that back parking lot to get to the front, because that's what's going on. As it is right now, that's what's happening with the Chipotle. That's what's happening. There's a walk-in medical. The ambulances go through there. Fire departments go through there. So there's a ton of traffic. I'm not sure if the town is considering that as the road, and then when you're adding 3 more restaurants, which I heard one of them was going to be a Chick-fil-A, you are bringing in a lot of young people who are driving through there. And what we're having in our back parking lot there are young people who, with their cars, are doing donuts, 360s, all hours of the night. They're shooting off fireworks. We have people who are sleeping in their cars. We have trucks parked right behind our yard where I guess they're delivering, but then it's like a rest spot for them. So they sleep there all night. The trucks are running in the summertime so that they have their air conditioning going on while they're sleeping. So this is in the middle of the night. When the wind is blowing one way, you have like all these fumes coming into our yards. There's just a lot of problems, and somebody has to take responsibility. I don't know if it's the town that owns that piece there. It's a road. If you look on the map, it is a road. It's called Greenbrier. But, it looks like a parking lot. But the town did put in a fence and they did put in some trees. So who is it? Who owns it? Is it the town or is it the owners of the stores? Do you know? I know. Nobody seems to know. When we call the police, they're like, oh, it's not us. When we call the stores, no, it's not us. So we don't know. Another problem that I have is that there are lights on the building, that floor decor, put lights, they're on all night long. So now we're seeing these lights for floor and decor. Why? There's nobody there. So that's another issue. There's a lot of issues there and no one seems to be taking control. If it is a road, why aren't there lines? And you're going to have a cut through. That's what it is. It is already. People trying to get to the front, people crossing through Johnson and Lakeland. So somebody's got to figure that out. But thank you.
Thank you. That's the only cards that I have on this presentation. I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan to give us a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As stated by the applicant, this application proposes 2 fast food restaurants within an existing shopping center. Generally, the staff has been supportive of fast food restaurants on pad sites where a shopping center can accommodate it without impacting site circulation or off-site traffic or on off-street parking. The subject site fronts Sunrise Highway where fast food uses are generally appropriate. The site plan shows a little bit more landscaping in the pad sites and overall approximately 20% parking relaxation when considering all the uses involved, combining all 3. The building elevations that have been submitted are relatively modern in nature and appear to be somewhat contextual with the greater shopping center. The planning staff would like to explore land banking front yard parking stalls to green up the site and improve the aesthetics of this portion of Sunrise Highway. However, the public did raise a number of interesting concerns that warrant further investigation by the staff. along with possibly the Division of Traffic Safety. So the staff would recommend the board reserve decision tonight.
Thank you. We do have some questions for you. You want to go, Mr. Brown?
As the applicants, do you have control over floor to floor? Is that part of your buildings? It's the same landlord that's looking to do the pads out front, right?
Correct, yes.
Because some of the questions come up with the lighting. Now, I know that that project didn't, when it went from Kmart to floor, didn't come before this board because it's as of right. But I don't know if we had the opportunity to, and I guess this is the planning staff. I don't know if we had the opportunity to review the lighting in that, that Ms. Lewis said, shines back into the street, which is Ashford Drive. The other question is Ms. Lewis brought up was Greenbrier. Now, I've come down Lakeland Avenue and I've gone into the back way into the shopping center on Greenbrier. And there is a turning lane and it is a very narrow, it's dark and not very well maintained road. So I think it's something that we should look at. And my concern is, do we really need access to the back of the shopping center at night? Or is that something that can be closed off at night and gated? And between there's two little passageways between the shopping center, the buildings. And maybe those things could be gated also to close access to the back of the building at night. Is that something that we need access to from Lakeland Avenue at night?
That's something we will discuss with the owner applicant and the town.
Right, because I think our concerns, or my concerns are the same as we only had two speakers tonight, but when you have two speakers, you have 20 other people that didn't come. So my concerns are the same as theirs with the back of the shopping center. Sunrise Highway was made, and it's a good location for these type of projects. But when we go back against the residential, that's where we have to really take a look at the project.
Understood, and I understand that the comments, while they don't address the out parcels, they are a concern that needs to be addressed. And I can have Mr. Shikowski here discuss traffic if the board would like.
Yes, and other than that, I'd just like to say a very good job renovating that shopping center.
Thank you.
I mean, just to Mr. Brown's point, the concerns that I would have are not what's going up front. I think you've dealt with the queues and the rest, but the residents did raise some really valid points that might have been addressed. They were as a right use when they switched the tenants in there, but certainly, is there a need to have full access back there throughout the night? Well, the applicant talked to planning staff about some covenants and restrictions in terms of hours of operation for delivery and trucks back there. Mr. Brown suggested gates. There's a possibility of maybe land banking parking along the property line in the back or something else to provide some more buffering between the residences and the shopping center. So I think up front works, but I think we need to address what happens behind the building to make it work. You want to be a good neighbor to the neighbors that are behind you, and this may be the opportunity to correct some of those problems. So are there further questions, Mr. Matamore and then Ms. Cruz?
I concur with my colleagues that this has brought up this subject, and I thank Mr. Canizaro and Ms. Lewis for doing that. And it sounds to me like we're on the right track to look closely at the Greenbrier cut through and whether or not that access to the back of these stores is feasible, number one, but it's certainly something that I think if we can possibly remedy it, we should try to do so to maintain the quality of life of the residents that spoke and all the people who live over in that way. It is annoying to hear about the donuts, and I assume that's between Greenbrier and the backs of the buildings. I don't think we're talking about the area to the south of the buildings. We're talking about the area to the north of the buildings. So we'll put it in the hands of council and our planners to dig into this, and now that we're alerted to it, and see if a solution can be found that's acceptable to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matamor. Ms. Cruz, did you?
Okay, so my suggestion, I don't know if Greenbrier has maybe speed bumps that could be added, if that's part of helping to curb some of what's happening in the back of the building. I don't know if there's fencing, if maybe also,
Just, we're keeping a record, so I can't have you. Thank you.
so I don't know if there's fencing, if more landscaping might be required back there. And of course, what are those trucks part of the tile place? Or are they from other stores that are stopping in there? Whose trucks are back there? Is it part of your tenants in there that are allowing them to come and, stay there? So that would be also important to know. But yeah, that's my comments.
And to Ms. Cruz's point, you may want to, on the way out, the resident did have the video. You might be able to see whose trucks they are and the rest, just to get an idea of where the problem is, and maybe you can correct that with your other tenants. But, I like the project if we can correct the back, the north side. I mean, what's going on back there should not be going on. There are residences up against that. There are ways to control that. Newer approvals usually have covenants and restrictions that limit deliveries, hours, and require different landscaping along the back. So what I'm going to do is ask you to work with planning staff on what can be done for the north side, how we can make that work. Mr. Ruggieri, go ahead.
Just by the way of maybe a couple of other suggestions, security cameras nowadays are fairly inexpensive, and to put security cameras in that back parking lot may be a great deterrent. If kids are doing donuts back there, maybe those security cameras pick up a couple of license plates, and the word will get out that you can't do donuts in the back parking lot. Another thing, maybe posting up some signs. I know when the police department responds to a private property, they are reluctant to act unless they get a complaint from the property owner. Maybe no parking, so no overnight parking signs of commercial vehicles. Violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, whatever the sign says. But something to that effect might be an effective deterrent for the trucks parking back there at night.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggieri. So we would ask that you work with planning staff. You've heard the concerns of the residents, and maybe you want to grab their numbers, and maybe you can work with them and address them better. One question I have on, obviously, the one that's possibly Chick-fil-A, whatever the case may be, obviously the parking queue is more than sufficient. You've done a fine job with that. I just wonder on the other parking queue, if that spills into that shopping center, how that works for your circulation.
I will let the development team answer that.
And again, if you can answer it this evening, or you can work with planning staff on it. I just wanted to put it on the record that just, if it spilled out onto a street, if that were, for instance, a Taco Bell or something else that was spilling out onto a street, we would have the question, not wanting to spill in the street. I just want to make sure your parking site circulation works for yourselves, that you don't have a problem in there. It's something for you to work out.
Yeah, well, just for the record, Ethan Chakosky with Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. We prepared we looked at the traffic for the site, and we'll be working with planning staff on the traffic portion of this project. So you'll see more from us. But in regards to the question about the queuing, it is set up so that even if it extends beyond that queue that's allotted in the drive-through, that it would all queue on site, and you have quite a distance in the site without it impacting Sunrise Highway, which is.
Really I'm not worried about Sunrise. I'm really worried about just your own site circulation.
Yes,
that's what I'm just pointing out, to make sure you have that addressed.
Yeah, we'll include that in
Thank you. Thank you.
But if there's any other traffic questions, the only other point I would make, just traffic related, there's a lot of discussion about Greenbrier. That is a signalized intersection with Lakeland Avenue. So I'm not sure that you can just close that off. And if you gate that access through there, you may have people, you can't just turn off the signal. So once they turn onto Greenbrier and go down, they need somewhere to turn around, or else that might be an issue. Yeah, from the discussion, but we'll work with planning staff.
Yeah, that's the important thing, is work with planning staff on that, and let's see if we can come up with something that'll work, that takes away the concerns raised by the neighbors.
Thank you.
Anything further from the applicant?
No, thank you for your time.
Anything further from the board? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we close this hearing and reserve decision on this application to give the applicant sufficient time to work out the comments that we heard tonight, specifically relating to traffic and noise disturbances and light disturbances with the residents behind.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing and reserve decision tonight to resolve some of the issues raised by the neighbors. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4 on the agenda, Town Board Application Public Hearing, 111 Realty Corp. CZ 2022-011, southwest corner of Union Boulevard and 4th Avenue, Bay Shore, 1684 Union Boulevard, County Route 50, 1692 Union Boulevard, County Route 50, 160 Maple Avenue, and 158 4th Avenue, Bay Shore. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 1 District to Business 3 District. 2 Town Board special permits for a gasoline service station and outdoor storage pursuant to 68-302C and A respectively. A Planning Board special permit for a convenience market pursuant to 68-302.1D, and a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5361. Site plan modifications are required as part of this application. Good evening, Mr. DiNicola, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, members of the board. Appearing on behalf of the applicant, Eugene L. DiNicola, 200 Railroad Avenue, Sayville, New York. Mr. Chairman, as indicated in the call of the meeting, the application is for a change of zone from Business 1 to Business 3 District, a Town Board special permit for a gasoline service station, a Planning Board special permit for a convenience market. Now, that is all with regard to an additional parcel of land, tax lot 106, which is also known as 158 4th Avenue, Bay Shore, which is to be added to a previously approved gasoline filling station site. Also, the previously imposed covenants and restrictions will be required to be amended to comport with this application. Now, on February 3rd, 2021, case number CZ 2019-021, this board recommended a grant to the Town Board for change of zone from BD District to Business 3 District, and a Town Board special permit for a gasoline service station for 3 parcels of land, 1684 Union Boulevard, 1692 Union Boulevard, and 160 Maple Avenue, which is also known as 164th Avenue. Now, 1692 Union Boulevard has an existing operating gasoline filling station with a convenience market. The Town Board approved the change of zone following a public hearing on February 25th, 2021, as well as the special permits, and an effect, covenants and restrictions were recorded in the Suffolk County Clerk's Office with regard to that application, and an effective date was granted May 23, 2021. Now, the applicant has since acquired an additional parcel of land on the south. So the 3 parcels of land were on Union, and 4th Avenue. Now, the additional parcel of 158 4th Avenue has recently been acquired, and the applicant wanted to add it to the existing service station. The original service station is on 11,500 square feet. So with the acquisition of the additional parcels of land, the overall parcel has now been increased to 27,473 square feet, substantially more than the 11,500 square foot original station at the corner, which, by the way, was CO'd in about 1951. We're all familiar with the area, so I will dispense with describing the area surrounding the subject site. But I would, Mr. Chairman, move the board to include in this application my presentation to the board from the February 3, 2021 public hearing.
Without objection, it's made part of the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, the applicant has made site layout modifications as a result of the increased size of land. The prior parcel of land proposed a convenience store on the west side facing 4th Avenue, and the proposed canopy was parallel to 4th Avenue. There, of course, were curb cuts on Union Boulevard, but that curb cut on Union Boulevard was only 60 feet from the intersection with 4th Avenue. The applicant has revised the layout of the site, which has been discussed with the planning staff, so that the convenience store is now on the south side of the site facing Union Boulevard. The canopy is now parallel with Union Boulevard, and the ingress and egress to Union Boulevard is now 94.7 feet west of the intersection with 4th Avenue, which the county has tentatively approved. It'll be right turn in, right turn out only. The number of parking stalls based on the submitted plan with this application was increased from 11 spaces in the prior application to 17 spaces, excluding, of course, the fueling positions, and landscaping will be substantially the same. However, in the last couple of days, I've had communications with the principal planner, Mr. Colgan, and we have made modifications to the plan, which he has requested. The building is being moved slightly to the east, so it's more in line with the canopy, centered with the canopy, but closer to 4th Avenue as requested. The parking spaces on the, let's see, it would be the southeast corner of the site, are being removed, and that area is going to be landscaped. A sidewalk, tentatively, if it's requested by planning, will be installed from 4th Avenue to the convenience store for pedestrian traffic. Now, that may be a very good idea because, as the board knows, across 4th Avenue on the east side, the former Toro Healthcare Center, Health Sciences Center, has been demolished, and a 418-unit apartment complex has been approved and is under construction, as I am advised, so that people walking to the train station will have the opportunity to get a cup of coffee and cross Union Boulevard. The train station is immediately across Union Boulevard to the north. So the modifications from the plan that has been submitted is the building is moving closer east to 4th Avenue as requested. The parking is being eliminated at this location. It is all going to be landscaped, which will increase the landscaping. There'll be arborvitae or some type of trees to block any the meters which are on the east side of the building. That was a concern to staff. So this would be the modified plan, and everything else would remain the same. The architecture of the building is remaining the same, and a rendering or a 3D has been submitted to the board in your packet there so you can see the architecture, which I think is extremely attractive with gables, and it'll be a marvelous improvement to that corner between the landscaping, the architecture, etc. Since it is simply an addition of an additional 4,000 square feet to the parcel, and that addition, that 4,000 square foot additional tax lot requires the change of zone, and the board has already approved the balance of the site, I would respectfully request that the application be approved by this board. I have with me, if the board has any questions, Andrew Valari with regard to traffic. He's a traffic engineer from Stonefield Engineering, and Mr. Chris Tartaglia from High Point Engineering with regard to the site plan or design.
Thank you, Mr. Nicole. That was an outstanding presentation. I'm glad you addressed the issues that planning staff raised. Why don't we go to the staff report, and then we'll ask you questions so we don't make it too easy on you tonight.
I appreciate your compliments, sir.
Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's not too much more I would add. Mr. DiNicola, as always, is very thorough. As stated by the applicant, an additional lot was acquired to address some concerns raised by the Suffolk County Department of Public Works, given the Union Boulevard's access and its proximity to the signalized traffic intersection at 4th and Union. Obviously, the landscaping improvements and the relocation of building is a positive development, as well as obviously making the site bigger. It's approaching conformity with today's modern standards for gas stations. So the staff really has no other objections to raise tonight. We could probably work out the covenants with the applicant after tonight's hearing, obviously subject to ensuring that the site circulation is adequate for the gas site. And I don't know if Mr. DiCola mentioned it, but there'll be a number of variances requested by the Zoning Board of Appeals, including for the number of fuel dispensers, the size of the site, the setbacks, but that's under the purview of the Zoning Board. So with that, there's no objection to moving ahead with the application.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Ms. Cruz?
Is this a 24-hour gas station?
Yes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
That will provide 10 to 12 permanent and part-time jobs. If the application is approved, then the site is developed, and during the construction, demolition and construction, probably create between 30 and 32 jobs for the development of the site during construction.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Ms. Member?
Just a comment. I'm very familiar with the site. The existing gas station has probably been there since before I was born, so it was definitely in a good place to be renovated. And I must say, Valero has been a pleasant addition to the town of Islip, and many of their sites, for one that I see all the time, is Saxon and Union, and it puts most people's gardens to shame. It really is beautifully maintained. So I feel that it's nice for our board to have credibility in Valero and their owners for doing the right things and maintaining their gas stations and improving the site. Certainly, it's an upgrade that will be in keeping with the tri-state improvement of this area, and I think it's a major positive to the area. So with that, concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Matamore. All right, Ms. DiNicola, anything further?
Well, just in furtherance of Mr. Manamore's statement, Mr. Bartolomeo meticulously maintains his stations.
Yes, they all are very nice. So that being said, I'm going to go, and for the record, we did approve this back in February of 21.
That is
I think
correct.
you're obviously back here due to the county and are back before us. I'm glad you took the extra steps as planning staff requested. That being said, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to close the hearing and grant the application, subject to the new site plan that Mr. DiNicola presented to us tonight, and the CNRs to be agreed upon with Mr. DiNicola's applicant and the planning staff, and then executed.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and grant the application, subject to the site plan that was presented this evening, as well as CNRs being agreed to with the planning staff and the applicant. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Ruggiero, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Have a good evening. Stay well.
Item 5 on the agenda, site plan modification, decision item. Eric, Maine SP 2021-010, south side of Montauk Highway, 280 feet east of Saxon Avenue, 490 Main Street, Bay Shore. Applicant requests a planning board approval of angled parking stalls, ADA spaces, and drive-through modifications. Good evening to the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ben Plum from Bowler Engineering. Mr. Mine was not able to attend tonight, so he's asked me to attend in his stead. We're located at 2929 Express Drive North in Hop Hog, and I'm here to answer any questions that anybody might have on the application. My understanding is that this application has been previously approved by the board, and that we're looking to adjust the site plan slightly by angling some parking stalls and allowing the double drive-through. I believe you have a packet in front of you, so if there's any questions on that, please feel free to refer to me. I also have Mr. Shikowski here from Atlantic Traffic Design, who can comment on any of the parking or drive-through questions that you may have also.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Mr. Is that Tanner's? Yeah, Mr. Gonzalez for report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This business three zoned, almost acre site is currently improved with a Taco Bell restaurant. As stated by the applicant, the current configuration provides a single lane drive-through queue with an on-site parking for patrons to walk into the building. Along with the adjacent property to the east, 500 Degnan Boulevard, a lot line change application was submitted that had Taco Bell's parcel acquire slightly more land further south from the former mini golf course in order to expand the drive-through on this site. This proposal is the culmination of those efforts, which now will be a double-lane drive-through with a bypass lane and the reconfiguration of parking stalls on the west side of the building. The applicant's team prepared a full traffic analysis that was subsequently reviewed and cleared by the town's independent traffic consultant, L.K. McLean Associates, and the only relief being requested tonight is to allow the angled parking stalls on the west side of the building, as shown on the site plan before you. The town engineer and the town's traffic consultant have no issues with the angled stalls, and they're designed in a way that allows the double-lane drive-through to operate more efficiently. This new design allows for several more vehicles in the queue for a site that is in need of increased capacity to help avoid any vehicle spillover onto Montauk Highway. So based on that, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Any questions for the board? No questions? Anything further from the applicant?
No, I mean, I'll just restate as the traffic engineer that, I think it's a great improvement for this site. It's a busy location, and the increased capacity is really going to, help that drive-through queuing.
Certainly a great, we happily get the cars off of Montauk Highway. Good luck getting those
Agreed.
people out of those angled spots when their cars are lined up in there, but that's within your landlord's property, your property. Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore.
Yes, I would move to close the hearing and grant the application subject to all the covenants that have been worked out with planning department. And I, for one, have experienced many times that it backs up, and it's a credit to the establishment, and anything we can do to keep the traffic off Montauk Highway is a good idea, and definitely should be encouraged. So we wish you good luck. Thank you.
It's a motion by Mr. Matamore to close the hearing and grant the application subject to the CNRs. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Eastview Self-Storage LLC, PB 2022-012, east side of Eastview Drive, west side of Lowell Avenue, 25 feet south of Sunburst Boulevard, Central Islip, 625 Eastview Drive. Applicant requests planning board approval for the signage in the PDDEC district pursuant to 68-324A 3A9. Not seeing the applicant, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you. The subject property is located on the east side of Eastview Drive, approximately 25 feet south of Sunburst Boulevard in Central Islip. It's improved with an 86,000 square foot mini storage warehouse, CO'd in March. Tonight, the applicant is looking for planning board approval of existing signage within the PDDEC district. There are two 77 square foot carved PVC facial signs erected at an overall height of 20.5 feet. These signs are located within the gables of the building facade facing north and west. Then there is one 30 square foot double-sided carved PVC monument-style ground sign with an overall height of 6 feet, which is located near the north entrance along Eastview Drive. It has also been brought to our attention that there is an additional ground sign located on Lowell Avenue and several front signs which aren't permitted. The applicant did confirm with me today that the ground sign on Lowell Avenue would be removed today. Any fence signage should also be removed, though. Although the signs were erected without the benefit of a permit, the signage is contextual with the building design, and planning typically encourages the use of carved PVC and monument-style signs. So based on this, planning recommends the board approve the signage as presented.
Any questions from the board? Not a public hearing on this one, sorry. Yeah. But just for the record, I can't, but we'll come back and answer any questions afterwards you might have. Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore?
Yes, I would move to close its hearing and grant the application pursuant to what has just been put on the record by Kelly Wisner.
It's a motion by Mr. Matamore to approve.
Yes.
Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, application is granted. Just maybe one other, then we'll come back to this. Planning Board decision item, Central Islip Associates LLC, PB 2022-015, northwest corner of Eastview Drive and Lowell Avenue in Central Islip, 0 Eastview Drive. Applicant requests Planning Board approval for signage in the Pddmf district pursuant to 68-324E2C. Not seeing the applicant, I'm going to go to Ms. Wozniak.
Thank you. The subject property is located on northwest corner of Lowell Ave and Eastview Drive in Central Islip. Tonight, the applicant is requesting approval of signage in the Pddmf district, which will identify the Foxgate development. Foxgate is a multifamily development which has a mix of ownership and rental units. The current ground sign is located on the subject parcel of the rental unit site, which is currently vacant but undergoing site plan review. The ground sign is a 31 square foot aluminum letter pin-mounted sign, which is affixed to a decorative stone wall at the entrance of the development along Eastview Drive. The height of the sign is a little over 3 feet, and it's set back 76 feet from the property line. Again, although the sign was erected without the benefit of a permit, the sign is decorative and serves as a nice welcome and identifier to the development. Therefore, planning recommends the board approve the signage as presented.
Is there a motion? Mr. Bruno?
The motion that we close the hearing and approve the signage as presented.
It's a motion by Mr. Bruno to close the hearing and approve the signage as presented. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Moriarty. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted. Is there a motion? Mr. Moriarty, second. Ms. Cruz, all in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Sorry you had. Kelly, I'm probably going to need you for this.